Hello everyone and welcome to my ABCGH Spoilers channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. As the calendar turned to 2026 in Port Charles, a subtle shift began to spread across the familiar streets and hospital halls of General Hospital. The community had been through a lot in recent years. Shootings, betrayals, medical mysteries, and family secrets that seemed to crumble faster than they could be repaired. But something felt different now. The air had a sense of regeneration mingled with trepidation, as if the residents' long-running story was about to take a big turn. Whispers among fans and even within the show's own narrative hinted at this transformation, with the return of several beloved and complicated characters, signaling that General Hospital was entering a new chapter, one in which old wounds would reopen, alliances would fracture, and the very fabric of town relationships would be tested in unexpected ways. One of the most anticipated discoveries was Maxie Jones, whose protracted absence due to a coma had left a visible gap in the lives of people who adored her. When she finally stirred and opened her eyes in early February, the world she found herself in was very different from the one she had left behind. Friends had moved on, children had grown, and the relationships at Crimson and elsewhere had shifted without her sharp wit and resilient spirit to guide them. Max's comeback marked not only a personal triumph over adversity, but also a broader awakening for the canvas. Her confusion and determination to retake her role made others realize how much had changed in her absence. Spinelli, ever the devoted tech genius, found himself caught between old feelings and new opportunities as Nathan West's shadow loomed greater than anybody thought. Nathan's return, whether in person or through revelations about Britt, provided layers of emotional complexity, making Maxie's reunion a catalyst for rethinking love, grief, and second chances. Britt Westbourne's presence accelerated this transformation significantly. Her reappearance raised many concerns about survival, hidden intentions, and the extent people would go to protect those they cared about. Britt's contacts with Jason Morgan were fraught with tension and unsaid history. Jason, the stoic enforcer, was confronted with an enviable decision as he navigated the truth about her reappearance and its links to bigger conspiracies involving people like as Sidwell and the lingering spirit of Caesar Faison. Faison's influence extended beyond death, with recordings and final projects that plagued Anna Dean and threatened to entangle Sonny Corinthos and Laura Collins in a web of international intrigue. Britt's fragility in these times humanized her, revealing a woman who had fought her way back from the edge, only to discover that Port Charles had not waited for her. Her growing feelings for Jason hinted to a romance that could transform both characters, drawing Jason away from his perpetual lone wolf position and forcing him to confront emotions he had long suppressed. The ripple effect spread to the Corinthos family, where Sonny's world remained fraught with peril and loyalty. Rick Lansing's return after years away put new tension into Sonny's orbit. As brothers with a troubled past, their reunions were laden with suspicion and unresolved resentments. Rick's homecoming coincided with legal maneuvering and family clashes that resurrected old wounds, particularly those involving custody battles and previous betrayals. Diane Miller, the sharp-tongued attorney, expressed her mounting concerns in courtrooms and private talks, reminding everyone that justice in Port Charles is never straightforward. These occurrences compelled Sonny to reconsider his empire, relationships, and the legacy he desired to leave for his children. Meanwhile, Carly Spencer forged her own ties, collaborating with Valentine Cassadine on schemes that might either undermine Jack Brennan's power or backfire horribly on everyone involved. Jack Brennan and his WSB ties were another pillar of change. The deceptive operative's actions, frequently in collaboration with Ross Cullum, brought high-stakes espionage back to the forefront. Port Charles had always included soap opera drama and criminal intrigue, but 2026 increased the foreign threats, making the community feel smaller and more vulnerable. Characters such as Jocelyn Jacks were drawn into these shadows, confronted with the implications of previous missions and the risks of trusting the wrong leaders. Brennan's interactions with Britt and Carly showed the fragile balance between personal loyalty and greater power dynamics. On the Cartine front, Revelations of Drew Kane's actions, leaving Ned to die outside Bobby's, sparked outrage and predicted long-term consequences. Tracy Quartermaine, never one to forgive quickly, queued up to take Drew down, joining a long list of individuals hurt by his recent plunge into darker ground. Willow Tate's trial culminated in the identification of Drew's shooter, a moment that echoed through families and friendships for years. The verdict shifted custody disputes, provoked confrontations, and exposed long-standing misconceptions. Willow's determination to recapture her children drove her to use hardball tactics with Michael and Alexis, while Drew's stroke rehabilitation left him vulnerable in unexpected ways. These household storms intermingled with larger conspiracies, demonstrating how personal sorrow may feed greater catastrophe. Laura Collins and Kevin Collins remained anchors amidst the chaos, and their scenes together provided moments of quiet strength. Laura's experiences with Sidwell pushed her to previously unknown boundaries, while Kevin provided the psychological understanding required to untangle the manipulations at hand. Their collaboration emphasized a topic arising in 2026: the importance of long-lasting ties in a town continuously transformed by returns and revelations. Other figures gave texture to the changing environment. Brick's arrival boosted Sonny's inner group, providing support alongside Jason. Following betrayal, Charlotte Cassadine flirted with embracing her darker Cassadine bloodline, implying potential confrontations. Rocco Falconer and other younger characters were given increased screen time, indicating a generational transition as the following wave began to influence events. As these returns unfolded, Maxie awakening to a transformed world, Britt bringing secrets and second chances, Rick causing family tensions, Nathan's shadow disrupting romances, and the ripple effects changing alliances. The program displayed its dedication to character-driven development. Port Charles in 2026 was not merely repeating previous cycles. It was extending, developing, and allowing characters to develop in unforeseen ways. Max's life had changed, and so had everyone else's. The returns were more than just nostalgia. They were sparks that ignited new fires. Relationships tested by time and tragedy found fresh ground or disintegrated under pressure. Villains from the past emerged in both tangible and spectral forms, reminding locals that history is never fully buried. The hospital, with its corridors resounding with diagnosis, recoveries, and farewells, reflected this transition. Doctors and nurses dealt with not just medical issues, but also the emotional aftermath from these returns. Patients like Maxie represented hope, while others dealt with the consequences of decisions performed in their absence. The combination of romance, revenge, and redemption resulted in a richer tapestry than previously. In quiet moments, the characters thought on how far they had come and how much further they could go. Sonny pondered love after loneliness. Carly considered risks in new alliances, and Jason faced truths he couldn't ignore. The town was buzzing with anticipation. What would these returns really mean? Will Britt and Jason's relationship endure scrutiny? Can Maxie rebuild amidst the changes? How might Rick's presence affect the Corinthos dynamic in the long term? The changes accelerated during February. Max's first steps out of the hospital room elicited tears and hugs, but also difficult discussions about what had happened. Britt's revelations about her own survival mixed with Jason's tales of Faison's remaining power, drawing them deeper into peril. Rick's scenes with Sonny were full with unresolved tension, hinting at future clashes. The WSB shadow lengthened, attracting more participants and increasing stakes. Throughout it all, General Hospital demonstrated resilience, responding to these returns by permitting true expansion. The program began to evolve significantly, not through gimmicks, but by the genuine reappearance of people whose absences had left spaces filled with passion, conflict, and opportunity. Port Charles felt alive again, brimming with the promise of stories that honored the past while forging ahead into the future. The residents, both old and new, approached the new year with a mix of fear and enthusiasm, knowing that change, great change, was unavoidable in this town and often breathtakingly dramatic. The air in Port Charles had changed long before anyone could understand why. There was no single big eruption or public scandal that changed everything. It was quieter and heavier. Conversations came to a halt when specific names were discussed. Old structures appeared to throb with unfinished business. The community had weathered mob battles, governmental corruption, medical miracles, and tragic losses. But this time, the shift felt different, as if the past had returned uninvited and unrepentant. Nobody could have guessed that 5 returns would be enough to shake the very basis of Port Charles. However, as the year progressed, it became evident that the town's future would never be the same. The first hint came when a familiar face walked into General Hospital just after morning. Initially, the staff paid little attention. The hospital was constantly bustling and hectic with people coming and going on a daily basis. But when Elizabeth Weber paused mid-step, her breath seizing cruelly in her chest, it was evident that something exceptional was going on. Lucky Spencer stood there, older, sharper, and carrying a weight that seemed unrelated to time. His eyes swept the corridor as if he were bracing for collision, knowing that the instant he returned, the past would smash with the present. Lucky had not returned for nostalgia. He hadn't returned to correct past sins or pursue unresolved romance. He arrived because something was amiss in Port Charles, and he knew deep down that he would be the first to feel it. News of Lee's homecoming circulated swiftly. Some welcomed it as a symbol of hope, while others saw it as a reminder of grief they had worked hard to forget. Elizabeth's answer was both. Their shared history permeated every aspect of her existence, and his presence revived scars she believed had healed long ago. But there was something different about him this time. He was not running. He was not angry. He was vigilant, aware, and silently determined. Lucky did not waste time. He went directly to Laura. Laura Collins had experienced enough turbulence to discern a storm before it arrived. When her son stood in front of her, she saw more than just the boy she had worried about, but a man who realized how delicate peace was. Lucky informed her that he had been monitoring whispers, financial irregularities, political intrigue, and clandestine alliances forming behind closed doors. Someone was altering Port Charles from the shadows, and the residents had no idea. Laura listened closely as she had her own doubts. As mayor, she had witnessed rising pressure from unexpected sources, donations of uncertain origins, policy initiatives that favored the same small group time and again. Port Charles was being directed, and the person behind the wheel had no intention of being observed. While Lee's homecoming sparked emotional responses, the second return sent shockwaves across Port Charles's corporate and political communities. Alcazar was back. The name alone was enough to make powerful men nervous and old foes agitated. Luis Alcazar did not announce his return. He did not need to. His presence was felt through abrupt changes in ownership, discreet buyouts, and well-timed legal machinations. Within weeks, other distressed properties in Port Charles were purchased by shell firms, all linked to the same source. Alcazar did not return to regain his old empire. He returned to create something considerably more dangerous, something legal enough to function openly while remaining flexible enough to manage everything beneath it. He positioned himself as a savior for Port Charles's economy, investing in infrastructure, healthcare, and housing. On paper, he resembled a hero. Sonny Corinthos was not fooled. Sonny spotted the pattern immediately. Alcazar was always 10 steps ahead, and this time he wasn't moving too noisily. Their first meeting after years apart was icy, reserved, and full of implicit threats. Alcazar did not want Sonny's domain. He desired authority, prestige, and control that went beyond the mafia world. Their rivalry rekindled gently, like a match sparked in a closed room. Sonny knew Alcazar's visit indicated the rules were going to change, and not in his favor. As tensions rose on the streets and in City Hall, the third return appeared like a ghost out of the fog. Emily Quartermaine. For years, Emily existed only in the memories, dreams, and collective sadness of those who loved her. Her comeback was not heralded with a press release or a theatrical entrance. It began with a private medical appointment at General Hospital with records so closely sealed that even the most determined nurses were unable to access them. Monica Quartermaine initially refused to believe that her daughter was still alive. Grief taught her to shield herself from hope. But when Emily finally stood in front of her, delicate but obviously genuine, Monica's walls of loss crumbled instantaneously. Emily's survival was the result of a series of unusual circumstances, including misdiagnosed death, secret medical intervention, and years of recovery under a different identity. She had not stayed away by choice. She had been concealed, shielded by individuals who feared her mere existence endanger her life. Her homecoming upset the Quartermaine family's emotional equilibrium. Jason, who had carried the weight of Emily's death like a never-healing scar, battled to reconcile the lady in front of him with the memories he had mourned. Their link rekindled instantaneously. But it was different, deeper, more difficult, and clouded by suspicions about who had arranged her absence. Emily carried more than just emotional healing with her. She brought secrets, names, evidence that someone influential profited from her alleged death, and that person was still active in Port Charles. The fourth return was less emotional, but more explosive. Rick Lansing strode back into town with a smirk that suggested he knew precisely how much trouble he was going to cause. Rick has never returned without an agenda, and this time was no exception. He arrived armed with legal leverage, private data, and a plan to dismantle long-standing partnerships, one court lawsuit at a time. Rick did not care about redemption. He cared about winning. His reappearance immediately complicated lives in Port Charles. Alexis felt a familiar dread creep into her gut as soon as she heard his name. Rick had a knack of drawing people into moral quandaries they never wanted to enter. He focused on issues that crossed with Alcazar's growing empire, utilizing the law as both a shield and a sword. What made Rick truly dangerous this time was his willingness to work with anyone. He was not loyal to Sonny. He was not faithful to Laura. He was not even faithful to himself. He was committed to the advantage, and he had found plenty of it in Port Charles's shifting power structure. The fifth and last return was unexpected, and it changed everything. Morgan Corinthos. For years, Morgan's death had been a defining tragedy, influencing Sonny's decisions, Carly's worries, and Michael's sense of responsibility. His disappearance tormented the Corinthos family in ways that they never completely acknowledged. So, when suspicions began to circulate that Morgan could be alive, most ignored them as nasty slander until Carly noticed him. It occurred in a busy public space where reality and illusion may readily blend. She saw his expression, heard his laugh, and felt her heart halt in her chest. This was not a doppelganger. This wasn't grief playing mind games with her. This was her son. Morgan's survival was linked to the same underground network that had concealed Emily, a mechanism designed to wipe, protect, or exploit people based on who was pulling the strings. Morgan had been duped, misled, and forced into a life far from Port Charles. By the time he got away, he was no longer the impulsive, wild young guy everyone knew. Morgan returned hardened, cautious, and filled with unresolved rage. His reunion with Sonny was tense. Love and bitterness collided, with each accusing the other of abandonment, failure, and irreparable decisions. Sonny saw a son he didn't recognize, and Morgan saw a father who had never changed. Carly tried to hold them together, but the damage was too severe to overlook. Morgan did not want to return to the mob world. He needed answers. He sought accountability. Most of all, he wanted to expose those who had taken years from his life. As these 5 returns intersected, Port Charles began to transform in ways beyond anyone's control. Lucky discovered proof linking Alcazar's investments to the same network behind Emily and Morgan's disappearances. Rick positioned himself at the middle of the legal turmoil, guaranteeing he would profit regardless of who fell. Emily led Jason to question his formerly unwavering loyalty. Morgan forced Sonny to face the repercussions of his enterprise. Alcazar, ever the strategist, watched everything develop with deliberate patience. The town divided along new lines. Old alliances have crumbled. Unexpected collaborations formed. General Hospital became both a healing facility and a fight for secrets. Laura's leadership was under threat due to scandals at City Hall. Families had to determine whether blood was stronger than truth. By the end of the year, Port Charles had changed dramatically. The returns did not recover what had been lost. They rewrote the future. As the dust settled, one truth became clear. This was just the beginning. The changes did not end with revelations and reunions. It permeated into people's daily lives, changing how they spoke with one another, planned their futures, and safeguarded those they loved. Port Charles had always been shaped by tradition, but now it was being reshaped by reckoning. Lucky became a silent presence in the background, assisting Laura in following the money trails that revealed how deeply outside forces had permeated the city's institutions. Each finding made it difficult to pretend that the threat was only momentary. This was not a single enemy. The system lived on secrecy and silence. Emily refused to return to the sheltered life that everyone expected for her. She insisted on returning to work at the hospital, determined to re-establish trust and rediscover her sense of purpose. Her presence invigorated those who had grown tired of compromising, reminding them why General Hospital existed in the first place. Morgan, meantime, began speaking to Michael in ways he had never done before. Honestly, without bluster or rivalry, the boys found common ground in their mutual fury and hope, quietly promising not to inherit their father's sins. As Rick and Alcazar continued their perilous dance, it became evident that Port Charles had arrived at a crossroads. The previous rules were no longer in effect. Survival now rested on honesty, courage, and a willingness to let the past catch.